mendelspod.com, advancing life science research, connecting people and ideas.
We're at the offices of DLA Piper, the global law firm, and we're joined by one of the partners, Bruce Jenett. He's also a former co-chair of the firm's global life sciences sector. Bruce has represented life science companies and their financiers for over 30 years.
Today's show is sponsored by Ingenuity iReport, the fastest and most accurate way to get biological meaning from your expression data. You can upload your data and get a free iReport analysis summary at www.ingenuity.com/get-iReport.
Thanks for having us over.
Happy to talk with you.
When you agreed to come on, you came up with your own theme for the show, the Dickensian dilemma for life science companies. It's the best of times and the worst of times. So let's take this sort of macro look at the industry and what's going on. Why is it the best of times and worst of times?
Well, first of all, it's not just now that it's the best of times and worst of times. That's been true for a number of years, but it's very evident now because there are all these dichotomies in information out there. Nobody's investing in early stage life sciences companies. The data says otherwise. Life sciences takes forever to get your money back. You can't invest in it and expect to see it in your lifetime. That's not true either. People are buying early stage companies and not paying much for them. That's not true either. So for a life sciences company and for people like me that represent them and work with them, it's a very difficult time to try to sort out the truth from the noise, which is true of most news, but particularly true for this industry. There are some macro trends which are very negative for the industry, very scary. If you're starting a company, if you're looking at another financing and you're not already public and secure. And at the same time, there's great promise in some of the data that's come out recently about where the money is and where it's going to go.
So let's sort through that then.
Yes.
What would you say, let's sort through the noise.
Right.
Why is it the best of times?
The best of times because I think people have not given up on life sciences. What they've given up on is poorly run companies that don't build value with the money they have. So people are starting to see drugs coming out, devices being approved that actually work. And people are saying, you know, patent cliffs are coming up for the pharmas. That means they're going to buy a lot of companies. They're not going to buy everybody. Fundamentally, the science is starting to prove to work. It's immensely more profoundly difficult in life science, especially in biotech, with no disrespect to social media, but in social media. You can build a social media company and take it public in a tenth the time it would take a life sciences company to actually get through a phase 3 and prove that the drug works and it doesn't kill people. Okay? So it's a great time to be a life sciences company because the money is there. It's a terrible time to be a life sciences company because only the very best companies are going to get funded, and they're only going to get funded by a very few venture capitalists. So the glory days of putting a sign out on the street that says cancer cure is here, give me $1 billion to start, aren't here anymore. I think people have kind of realized what the life sciences industry and its time frame and its difficulties are about. And now it's sorting through all the science projects, okay, to find the ones that are going to work.
So when you say reality has set in, that's a good thing.
I think it's a very good
it's
thing.
a tough reality, but maybe we're facing it more head-on or something?
I think it's a tough reality, and I think it sort of trickles through a couple of different stakeholders, okay? First of all, the financiers. There's a forest fire in the venture capital industry, and yes, it's terrible, it's killing old growth redwoods and the sweet little forest animals, but if that forest fire doesn't happen, the whole forest dies because it lacks enough nutrients, it lacks the sunlight to grow. So a forest fire in the venture industry with a lot of funds not raising money, a lot of limited partners saying, whoa, this is a stupid place for us to put our money because of the time frames and the risk. So the teachers' pension funds and the large institutional funds, Harvard funds and the like, have suddenly said, I can't wait 15 years. I can't run a chance that 1 in 5,000 compounds that look like they might cure cancer or CNS are actually going to work. I'll put my money, as one large institutional investor said, excuse me, I'll put my money in timber and hotels. I can touch it, feel it, understand it. I can watch the trends in, rooms sold per night. I have no idea how long it's going to take to get my money back in life sciences.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about this problem. You've mentioned a massive disconnect between the financial instruments and the time and it takes to create these companies. And so, what's the nature of the problem there, and how do we solve it?
So that's actually, it's not the instruments themselves, because where people put their money in preferred stock or bridge loans or whatever, public company stock, that's not the problem. Those are really well defined, and they protect against risk and allow the VCs and angels to have controls that they need in an early stage company. It's a total disconnect between the amount of money needed, period, and the time it takes to get it back, and the risk profile. So if I wanted to start, again, a social media company right now, or even an iPhone app, I could create an iPhone app in my den and maybe sell it for $1 million with very little money in it. It's a pretty good return, pretty good financials, pretty short time frame. So let me analogize it this way. A lot of industries, particularly in the social media, cloud computing and all that, yes, they're risky and many people fail. That's like going to the casino and playing 21 blackjack. Okay, there's some interesting people around. The game doesn't take too long. You can count cards legally or illegally. You can figure out what your risk profile is when the dealer's got 17 or 18. You kind of feel it. And it's over and done. And most blackjack tables don't have $5,000 per hand minimums. Well, that's social media, internet, consumer products, those kind of sort of things. Now, if you want to take your house mortgage, your kid's inheritance, your wife's dowry, sell all your cars, and take all that money and walk into the room in the back behind the velvet rope and play $25,000 a hand Texas Hold'em or 5-card draw poker, that's biotech. Devices is a little less risky, but not much. And the time frame required is huge. So that's risk. Time frame is anywhere to get to proof, real proof, phase 3, it really works, could be 15 years.
So was that the crisis here for the life science investors? Is that the IT looks so good?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you raise money from people and you raise $500 million, and they're looking to you to get them a return of 4, 5, 6x, maybe 10x, which is unrealistic, then would you put it into a biotech product? Or would you put it into an internet company? Would you put it into a medical device? Or would you put it into some new communications technology? There's a statistic that shocks me, and every time I think about it or see it, I haven't seen it in a while, but one of the big accounting firms did this years ago, and it's still true today. The internal rate of return, that's how well your money is turning into bigger money, for the venture capital industry as a whole, not the leading funds, the Sophie Novas and Kleiner Perkins and NEAs and all the ones that are doing well, the Bursants, they do well. But the entire industry, the internal rate of return is about 2% from roughly 1946 when venture really started.
So the stock market's been much better.
S&P has done 4%. That's the dirty secret of venture capital. For every Britney Spears that every blonde little girl thinks I can be Britney Spears, there are thousands that just don't make it. So that's the nature of this industry. This may sound like a facetious answer, but the VCs I hang out with and work with and represent are the ones that are successful. They're lucky, but they are very carefully choosing products technologies that can become products that are needed, understand the regulatory pathway. If the good CEO is not there, they bring him or her in. They're driven to fail early or succeed early. Okay? And they're driven in that part of the equation to also maybe sell early. We'll talk about that perhaps, but in the old days, you got the company, you grew it, you took it public, you were a big star, you got your Ferrari, and hopefully you didn't drive too fast and go off the road. And today, it's let's build this company up and get a really great return or a good return by selling it at a very early stage, where we'll get a higher valuation in the biotech side than we will in late stage, which is another one of those conundra. The thing that I'm seeing is a lot of stuff in the press, popular press. This isn't going on, that's not happening, this isn't funded, that's not. The data that you see from various sources that are credible tells you a very different story. So to go
What's an example of that?
I'll give you an
or two?
example. That no one's funding emerging early stage life sciences companies, biotech and device. That's not true. The percentage of venture funds that have gone into early stage Series A preferred financing, right after friends and family and fools, right, is about 15% year in, year out. So the problem is not right now. So when I said best of times, worst of times, if you're a good company with good management, there's money at the early stage. Mm-hmm. But here's another dark and dirty secret that people in the industry, in the VC industry know. The amount of money invested now versus the amount of money raised and being raised is about 3 to 1. What does that mean? It means there's a huge underhang. So
we're not raising the money for the future.
That's exactly
investments.
right. That's exactly. So there's this giant surfing wave, and everybody's on top of it, feeling great and looking good. But eventually, that wave crashes, and if you're on top of it, too far ahead of it, you go under.
Do you have any idea when that's going to happen, or?
No, I'd say there's another washout coming when even those good funds that raise money don't have enough to support all the companies around. There are over 1,000 biotech companies, life sciences companies, that have been created since 2005. They're not all going to win. Guess what? Life isn't fair. Guess what? Statistically, in a venture fund, if they have 10 investments, one might be a barn burner through the roof. 2 might do pretty well, 2 to 3x. 1 might be a walking dead. What do we do with it? We can't kill it, but it's not really salable. And many of them fail. The smart venture capitalists are the ones that actually, they have a better nose for technology and people than maybe some others. And they work. They're at the boardroom table. When the CEO says things are going well and the eyes are kind of squinting, they go, tell us how it really is. Mm-hmm. So all that's well and good, but there is a lack of money coming in. There are lots of companies out there that are going to need more money. Where are they going to get it? And the last piece is that a number of funds, I wouldn't say a lot, a number of venture funds have said, we're not going to invest in life sciences anymore. There's a major fund here in the Valley, one of the leading names, probably the preeminent name, that said, to my shock, because they have spectacular people there, we're not going to put any more money into life sciences. We're going into telecom, clean tech. Okay, who knows where clean tech will go? It may be like nanotech. So then people look around and go, well, where was that? It's still here. But you understand that life sciences is not in favor in a number of major venture funds. So where does the money come from? It doesn't come from the public markets. It doesn't come from the government. Don't know where it comes from. There aren't enough angels to fund all these companies.
What about the rise in corporate venture?
That's actually a really interesting trend. But again, what you see and what you hear is not necessarily what's going on. So the number of corporate venture capital funds, so-called, that have arisen in the past 3 or 4 years is like mushrooms after a rain. Some of them are directly tied to finding things that tie into what the company needs now or will in the future. So they're only looking for things that the company, the pharmaceutical company or the big device company needs. A number of them are completely independent and sort of pantheistic or agnostic. Novo Ventures, which is a wonderful group that I work with, has Novo Nordisk in its name. But it can invest in anything it wants to because the fund money came from the family foundation, which said, go out, do good, not find me something that works for diabetes. So there are all these.
They're open to innovation wherever it's happening.
Absolutely. And all of them are good. They have good people in them. Some of them are better than others. But, and there are some interesting ones. Merck has, for example, 3 innovation funds, 4 innovation funds. One of them is a quarter of $1 billion. The old line says pretty soon we're talking about real money. That's a pretty good sized fund. It's focused on healthcare IT. Now, what is that? It's better communication between doctor and patient, better hospital records. It's not what you typically think of as life sciences, but Merck, which used to be the biggest pharmaceutical company in the world, right? I remember the time when the market cap of all public biotech companies was less than the market cap of Merck. Not true anymore. They have put $250 million into a fund looking at healthcare IT, not show me the molecule, not a device. However, and this is from let's call it a major player in the corporate venture area, a number of these funds are being pulled back and terminated. Publicly known since January, Biogen IDEC, which has two of the smarter people in the business, George Skangos and Steve Holtzman, said, we're not going to do a venture fund in Biogen IDEC anymore. The thesis of what a venture fund would do, find great new stuff early, enable us to have our scientists working with we can do better on our own.
So we're seeing some pullback already.
We're seeing some pullback. I still think it's going to be a major player group, but to the macro point, by the way, there are some good points about all this. These are just the reality sets, okay? The bad news is we have nothing to eat between here and San Diego in our car trip but tuna salad sandwiches. The good news is it's a really good tuna salad sandwich, you know? So if you want a steak, you're out of luck, but if you like tuna salad, it's okay.
So that means that the science is here. The innovation is happening.
Well,
there are good companies.
Well, there are good companies. So let me rise to a higher level and say, good companies with good technology that points to a product and is not merely a science project, that's run by good to great management teams with venture capitalists that actually bring something to the table and work shoulder to shoulder, they're going to get funded and they're going to do well.
Yeah, we saw this. We heard from Susan Molyneux. She's the CEO of Calithera. Her previous company, Proteolix, was bought by Onyx, and that drug just got approved by the FDA.
And by the way, that's a really good point. You never know. Don't leave the movie before it's over. It's just, oh, well, that drug, Inclone, horrible disaster, scandal, the whole industry is in disarray. And then it turns out okay. So it's not going to get funded. Ill thought out companies with bad science or science that really is just speculative science that the government ought to fund, management teams that aren't any good, venture capitalists that don't know what they're doing, and there are some. As one very prominent venture capitalist who does not meet the criterion of this statement said, all the dumb kids are flunking out of class. Now, I'm not saying that about the venture capitalists I know. Is that good? I think so. There was irrational exuberance in 2007, 2008. You look at the spikes of investment, then it's down. It's just reality. Once again, Facebook. Oh, okay, it's just a company. Let's see what their ad revenues look like in place of, oh my gosh, I got to get into Facebook, right? It's human nature.
Let's talk about what you do here at DLA Piper. So for those who don't know, what do you do? Why are you passionate about it?
First of all, I have fun. If you don't have fun, you shouldn't be doing it. What I have fun doing is, and somebody asked me years ago, what do you do? And I say, I'm focused intensely on helping emerging companies primarily. These are the companies that are starting out pre-public. Find and commercialize products I really pray I'll never need, but I probably will. So I'm actually not trying to figure out how many more people I can kill in a first-person shooter or video game. I wouldn't wake up feeling good about that personally. But I wake up saying, let's see, we've got to get this company financed that we just are closing today, a company that can enable police departments to do a DNA match on a suspect in 60 to 90 minutes versus 2 weeks to a month. So you get pulled in on something. If you're innocent, you are out of there. If you're guilty, they don't have to go look for others.
In real time, just right there at the crime scene.
That's worth doing. So what I do is very simple, what most lawyers do. I listen to the client. I'm part of their team. I respect them, they respect me, and we try to solve a problem. And then we try to get the company funded, and we structure the funding, we document the funding, we close the funding. We need to find a corporate partner to help out, maybe develop, maybe distribute, maybe they have technology we need. We negotiate those deals. It's intensely people-focused. It's intensely small group-focused.
So you're helping the companies find funding?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Most people at my stage, I've been doing this for almost 3 decades, we at this stage, and even earlier stage lawyers in their careers, you're expected in Silicon Valley to help get your company funded and to be an advocate for it. If you can't be an advocate, they shouldn't be your client. But primarily what you get to do is to be a trusted advisor. That's powerful. It's like what I think being a doctor used to be, okay? That you're actually doing something really profoundly good that you feel good about doing. It's intellectually interesting. You've got to deal with people, okay? So if you've got bad people skills, it won't work. And at the end of the day, my thrill is saying, well, I was part of that. Everybody, you get paid. Sometimes you don't.
This is the best of times thing that you're talking about, which is it's really good tuna salad.
Yeah. Let me tell you
It's
why.
really
exactly.
Good ideas, great products.
Exactly.
It makes a difference in people's lives.
I mean, it's the best of times if you love tuna salad, unless you're a tuna. Then it's not the best of times. but why is it the best of times? Let's focus on that for a minute. The data says that the industry is robust, that products are coming online, that notwithstanding all these perturbations of venture funds that are going out of business and can't fund their second round, notwithstanding the occasional Vioxx, think about how many other product industries have problems like that, okay? Vioxx is rare. A post into the market, Vioxx, the breast implants, those things are
Red herring.
Rare. Well, not red herrings, but they're just statistically rare. So it's the best of times because the science is, with one caveat, the science is there. We've made huge advances in science, number one. Number two, the money is there. Not for everything. If I ran the government, I would increase by tenfold NIH grants, keep the same rigorous standards for them, and let the government pay for science to get to what one of my colleagues calls a proof of relevance. Not proof of concept. I think it works. The mouse looks like it's better. Proof of relevance. So what?
How's it going to affect people's lives?
Right.
Go further.
Right. Where's the product? Mm-hmm. What one VC I know says, show me the molecule. I don't want to hear your ideas. Show me the molecule. So it's a great time for good science to get funded, even without the government coming up. The corporates are there. Pharma has patent cliffs coming up. There's a big thesis by big. I mean, it's profound, and I use that word again, but these are sea changes in the industry that in, I don't know, pick your time frame, 5, 10 years, the major pharmaceutical companies of today, many commentators, including some in those companies, say, we've lost our way. We don't know what we're doing anymore. I won't mention names. But what we're going to become is disease management patient specialists.
They're looking for a new model.
They're looking for a new model. And pick your $22 billion company. Take your $3 to $4 billion a year revenue generating product off the market effectively because your patents run out and everybody out there is producing cheaper models in India and Mexico or wherever. And then say, I got this huge overhead in all these buildings. I have to reinvent. So is that good news? I think so. Because those who will do the development and commercialization of products best, which is the emerging companies, even the larger companies like Amgen, Biogen, IDEC, and those companies are doing well, Gilead. So it's a great time to be in this industry. The money is there. There's one thesis I've held, though, that if we really scrape away everything, and people either agree or disagree with me depending on their own views, obviously, in the industry. I'm talking about scientists. I'll put it to you very simply. This is great. We have stuff coming online. We actually are starting to understand Alzheimer's and cancer and gastrointestinal and diabetes. We're actually starting to get, as a nation, that, boy, wouldn't it be more sensible to prevent diabetes and to pay 10 times the discovery cost of a drug to fix the problems of a diabetic? Well, what's the problem? We're digging a gold mine with a teaspoon. What are we doing? We're digging a gold mine with a teaspoon. Why? The technology for discovering what works, sorting through the hay bale, finding the little pebble in the bottom of the gold pebble in the bottom of the river, the technology for discovery and analysis is not where it should be. You'd like to find that needle right away, wouldn't you? Right? If you're looking for a needle in a haystack, which is what biotech, even more than device, does. Rather than dig around in the hay bale or take the hay bale apart or wait for the sun to shine on it, wouldn't it be nice to pull out one of those old cartoon magnets, horseshoe magnets, 12 billion kilowatts, and you turn it on, zip, the needle comes right out of the haystack. We don't have that.
What is that horseshoe magnet?
I don't know.
And what's the big tractor that can go in and do the mining, as opposed to the teaspoon?
Oh, precisely. I don't know. I think the point that I'm getting at is I think there is a lag in discovery tools. Other people would disagree. Mm-hmm. Some would agree. Mm-hmm. It's not the major barrier, mm-hmm. but I think that the tools business, okay, which by the way is way down the scale on both money in and return out.
Sequencing instruments.
Like spectroscopy instruments, any analytical instrument that will tell you what is the particular gene that's doing this, why is it doing this, how is it reacting. If we could improve the failure rate, which sounds contradictory, we have a better success rate. And we wouldn't spend quite so much money getting to the very end.
So you're talking about a mindset, really. You know, when you come back and say, there's a gold mine, we're going at it with a teaspoon. If people would look at it that way, maybe we would start developing the discovery tools, better discovery tools.
I think that's right. Now,
and so why aren't we there already? If people don't realize the potential
they realize
that's in the mine there?
Let me give you an analogy to answer that question. So if you're going to put your money somewhere and you were very scared and you'd lost a lot of money with the Madoff scandal and the markets generally, and you're looking over your shoulder at your limited partners or the union members, the pension fund members, whatever, you wouldn't put your money in life sciences. You'd put it into hotels, timber, consumer stuff.
Why?
Because the returns, A, are faster, B, things always can happen, but at least you can understand the market forces. So one reason Warren Buffett's been very successful is he just cuts away all the stuff, says, are people going to buy this? Okay, would you put your money into Walmart knowing the demographics of how people buy stuff they need? Or would you put it into some little molecule that seems to have an interesting effect? It's going to take $160 million in 15 years to find out if that last card gives you the winning hand. Wow, so, I have to think about that, you know.
So in this case, you're saying you're implying that the money is driving the industry. The money's driving the discovery. Whatever we have money for, whoever will invest.
That's right, absolutely. And I don't want to overemphasize the discovery tool point. Okay, there are fabulous tools out there. I just have this nagging feeling that if we would put as much attention, there's a lot of attention being paid to it, if we put as much attention into discovery tools as we put into using tools to try to discover what the molecule does or how the gene reacts or whether this causes it to turn off or on, we might make more progress and spend less money. Now, I don't know if that's going to be true or not, but again, the analogy I'll draw is tools are way down the list of what people put money in and way down the list in terms of upfront buyouts and all of that.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay, look at diagnostics. Diagnostics right now are hot. People finally realize, how can we cure it if we don't know what's wrong? Hello. I can remember a number of years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, when people wouldn't go near diagnostics. Why? Well, the margins aren't there. You know, there's people out there doing that. You know, we're going to put our money...
Reimbursement issues.
We're going to go in...
FDA didn't decide how they wanted to see it yet.
To that analogy about the poker, we'd rather go behind the velvet rope and be really gutsy and put $25,000 down on the turn of a card. A lot of people did that and lost all their money and said, ooh, maybe we should just exit entirely.
We did a series on innovation in pharma. And one of the major themes for a solution, I mean, you were talking about maybe we need better discovery tools. A major solution would be more open sharing and collaboration. And I've been wanting to ask an attorney this question because usually once you start sharing in new ways, then it takes an innovative way or new way of valuing IP, which is where the attorney gets involved. Right? So once you have pharma start sharing, I mean, there's a whole movement called open science, right?
Absolutely, right.
Share
Linux for biotech, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. They're trying to bring the open source kind of thing from IT over. And so I wonder what your thoughts are on that, because it's the attorney who has to sit there and sort of craft the agreement.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question because there is a natural, in a large organization, especially one driven by science, there's a natural not invented here. That is, well, why would we work with them? We didn't do that, so it can't be any good. Now, that's an overstatement because I don't view scientists as people living in a cave and, you know, never talking to their buddies. In fact, that's a problem. They do talk to their buddies at conferences. But, you know, I think, let's pull back to answer that question to, like, step up on the mountain and look down at what's really going on down there. So you got the government. The government's deeply involved in healthcare for good or ill. You've got a fundamental element of this industry, wet side, biotech, pharmaceutical, dry side, devices, analytical instruments, that you don't have in social media, internet, even cars, motorcycles, called the FDA. There is, to my knowledge, no such animal. If I start a software company that does database management, I don't have to run it through a regulatory body that requires me to spend $160 million to prove that it's not going to mangle the data and cause airplanes to crash.
Yeah.
I run tests. I'm not stupid about it, but there's no FDA.
Life science and healthcare has a much higher barrier when it comes to
Much
regulation.
higher barrier. The FDA, I feel sorry for them because they have to operate under it's better to say no. If you say yes and something horrible happens, first of all, you're pilloried. Secondly, you can't sleep at night. Now, there's that barrier. The second barrier is, or second element of what's going on, to answer your question in a second, is you have these huge players who are, the closest analogy I could think of would be DEC, Digital Equipment Corp, back in the 70s when they didn't quite get on the laptop program and they died, right? The large computer companies that failed to kind of get, Tom Watson of IBM once said, I can't imagine why anyone would ever want a personal computer in their home. Well, it wound up being sold to Lenovo, right? So,
right, they missed out on the IBM,
missed out on that.
and they almost went under.
But
then they reinvented themselves.
And by the way, they're deeply involved in life sciences as well. They said, aha, here's an industry in which our data management could be very valuable, and our equipment. Now, you have these large pharmaceutical companies that are in serious, imminent risk of running out of gasoline in the middle of the freeway at rush hour. You know what happens? You get hit and you spin off to the side. I don't know what they're going to do. Do they evolve their model? How many companies can they buy and integrate? And how many of those are going to be successful?
Mm-hmm.
The third is that the money is thinning out to only the smart kids in class, to use the venture capitalist analogy that I quoted. So what's going to happen to the industry is, I think, a more rigorous, focused approach. I don't think it's bad what's going on right now. I think only companies that really focus on great technology, great science, take the risk, are going to succeed. And I think that the money's there to support them. And I think we're going to see less falderall and money wasted. But you know what? It's all going to come back again. Everything goes in waves. There'll be this period of restraint and constraint. I wouldn't say austerity. Okay, is it healthy? Yes. Is it going to slow down the advance of health-related technologies? Maybe. Okay. People are still going to have bright ideas in universities, just not all of them are going to get funded. So to go to that point for just a minute, are we going to become, is the speed of innovation, okay, going to slow down? You talked about collaboration. To go back to that point, yeah, the companies will collaborate, but it's like, two hungry wolves will only go hunt together if they both realize they'll die if they do it individually. Right? They're not quite there yet, right? Oh, there's a deer. I'll get it. No, I'll get it. No, let's go get it together, right? So I think there is collaboration. There is a lot of collaboration. This industry is, I think, a little more open and willing to talk with each other than the software industry or the semiconductor industry, which is, I got 10% of your business, that means you lose 10%.
Is that because of the greater good?
Yes.
More people look at that bigger picture?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually think there's a different, it's an interesting question because I believed, and I've been doing this for, almost 30 years. I really believe that there is a difference in the mindset and psychology of people who play deeply in the life sciences industry, and that includes the financiers who are successful and focused. They really care about curing disease, about alleviating pain, about letting people live a better life longer, so that your life curve doesn't go like that, it goes like that. Okay, that'd be better. Except for that part, which we don't want to have happen, but it will. So there is a more collaborative mentality in the people in this industry. They compete, but they don't box with each other. It's more like a football game than a boxing match, okay? Or maybe even more like skiing, where you're skiing with your buddies and you want to ski faster, but you're still together, and it's kind of a group thing. That spirit, I think, is going to carry out of whatever this current little, bump is. People have a weird tendency to look at these bar charts and go, oh my God. And I remember one of the head people at one of the major accounting firms once put up a slide with cash in and IPOs, and it went from 70-something through 2000, 2001, when there was a big spike in, everybody was ebullient. And if you looked at this data, it looked like the Golden Gate Bridge. It went up. And oh my God, then it went down. Everybody's like, that's terrible. Look at, and he did something very interesting. He took a piece of cardboard, laid it over the projector, and got just to the edge of 2000. Guess what? Pretty stable. Put it to the other side of the bar. Look back, other than that spike of irrational exuberance, pretty stable. So a factor that goes on here is people still believe in hope and hype in life sciences. But the industry is getting a little more realistic. Pharma is desperately trying to reinvent itself, either by buying as many companies as it can or morphing into patient disease management strategies. Are we going to wind up with better products? Yes. Are we going to wind up with everything getting funded? No. A company's going to go under? Absolutely. Are some great companies going to fail? Yeah. One of the interesting things on collaboration. So what happens when, over a course of 10 years, shockingly, 3 of the major pharmaceutical companies combine? Wow, that's interesting. Great. Well, he just took 2 competitive players off the field in any bid auction process trying to sell the company. Yikes, I'm not sure I like that. That may happen. So as to why there is hope in the midst of all this turmoil and violent seas and, perfect storm, I'm not a Pollyanna about the industry, but I am a firm believer that
a Pollyanna would be someone who just
Pollyanna,
overly optimistic.
Says, well, there's a tiger chewing off my leg, but I've still got another one. That's a Pollyanna. You're irrationally happy, right? I'm happy, but I'm not irrationally happy. And I have to believe that what's going on right now is a good, what would they call it in the stock market? They would call it an adjustment. It's a necessary adjustment. It's not that the market dropped and your 401k is now, a 205.1k. It's that the market is adjusting to reality. Oh, it's not that incredibly, wonderfully, everything's going to work. Okay, but what is working? I actually think that we are at the beginning of a large growth spurt in the industry. And I also believe that the amount of information that's being put out by the Burroughs and the Silicon Valley Bank folks with these reports and the Venture Capital Association reports, the more information gets out, the more people dissociate the mythology from the reality. And the reality is actually pretty positive.
That's why we do this.
Exactly. It's precisely. I think that some views I held 2 or 3 years ago about where things were going, maybe a little bit pessimistic. I mean, you could define a pessimist as an optimist with better facts, okay? But I'm not pessimistic. I actually think that if you read the thoughtful commentators, Karen Bernstein is another one, BioCentury. If you read what people are saying, there is a very steady state, fairly stable industry there that is only going to grow. Why? Because people need the products.
Who do you read? What do you read every day?
I don't know that I read it every day, but every day I do get an e-blast called Bay Biotech Review. It's a really good clipping service. It contains links. I can, in 5 seconds, see, I want to read that, I don't want to read that.
Yeah.
And so I may miss something, but it beats trying to sort through the New York Times or whatever. It's really good. It's quick, and it's done, and I can pass things on.
And then the bigger reports.
On the bigger reports, I think the large annual reports that are put out, and they are really insightful. What do I really think? Now, here's a bunch of data by the large accounting firms. The EYs and PwCs are superb. Now, they are a snapshot, and the industry might have changed, but as they look back, and they always have titles like Rising from the Ashes or Surviving in a Cannibal Culture or whatever. They have cute titles, right? But they're worth reading, and they cover a lot of international things. We tend to be very parochial, but the industry. By the way, the industry outside the United States is in far worse shape than in the United States. Europe is still in permafrost. Brazil may be exuberant, but we'll see where that leads. But the data in those large reports are good. Steve Burrell's daily or weekly broadcasts are excellent. They're thoughtful. What you all are doing, I read yours because it tells me something. It gives me a different insight. The Silicon Valley Bank reports, which I mentioned a couple of times, because they have an amazing, in a few pages, an amazing amount of, here's what people think. But survey says, oh, so device investments actually take longer and get lower multiples, and then explains why. that enables me to think a little bit differently and advise a client a little better about how we're going to make this successful. So I'm very upbeat about it. I'm upbeat by nature, but I'm upbeat about the industry because I actually think we are through some learning lessons. I'd say as a summary comment that the industry now is even more experienced than it was before. And my definition of experience is what you get when you didn't get what you wanted, so you don't make that mistake again. Anyway, I'm pretty optimistic about it.
Let's look back over your 30 years. I mean, we have been looking at the macro picture, but with you, was there a dark moment for you? What would be the darkest sort of
yeah, I think I think right now is a kind of a scary moment because everything is kind of uncertain. You can look at the Silicon Valley Bank data. You can look at, by the way, you can look at the study done recently by Deloitte with the National Venture Capital Association, and it says venture capitalists are not real confident. And by the way, strangely enough, and this is a survey of about 10 global or national, like the Japan Venture Capital Association, VCs feel far more comfortable investing domestically than internationally. Well, that's kind of understandable. You don't get a plane ride and go to Karachi for a board meeting, right? But that's kind of dark because it says, where's the global capital market? In an ideal world, the sovereign wealth funds and the family offices would invest directly in place of putting their money into the Carlyles and the Blackstone and BlackRocks, okay? Who then put it into venture funds. I don't think that's going to happen. Is that going to solve our funding problem? No. It would be great if we had a global electronic securities market so that if you do go public, you can access wherever the capital is. John Thain used to preach that with Euronext and NYNEX. It's going to happen.
I just saw a press release yesterday that Burrell's investing $30 million in Taiwan.
Well, right. Now,
in their life science sector.
Exactly. By the way, and I have a lot of respect for what Steve does, both as to the data he puts out and the conclusory writing. But also, he's got guts, and he does a lot of stuff abroad.
Yeah.
Most venture capitalists will not do more than one day's airplane ride. Okay, so that means we're not quite. Is that dark? Is it scary? No, it's like, that's not going to solve the problem. It's worrisome. So you have worrisome, scary, and dark, right? But there's another element to that, which is, it's very surprising. You kind of say, well. Are we in a dark period where we're going to lose scientific leadership to China and India and Brazil? I don't think so. There's that talk, but I don't think so. The highest level of confidence for money raising and money investing in the venture community, besides the obvious conclusion that it's in IT, and if it's in life sciences, it's in oncology because that hasn't been solved. Guess where it is? Brazil. Confidence level is here. For everybody else, Brazil is up here. And this is not just the Brazilians being their usual exuberant selves. This is the industry.
Being confident in Brazil.
So is that dark? No, I think it's actually light. It's great. We have a large operation in Brazil. It's a relationship with a large firm there. By operation, I mean it's primarily energy and infrastructure, but there's some pharmaceutical companies there.
Okay, so a best kind of time for you, a really good time?
Really good time is when my clients get funded, the CEO stays in his or her job, the board's working harmoniously. There are a lot of good times. Where are the dark times in my practice? Not for me worried about the industry, because I have great faith in it. Dark times are when there's real tension between the board and the management. The board's not working together and they're trying to pin the blame on management, or management's not working well and the board won't do anything about it. Or a really good company that is forced to sell, not desires to sell, forced to sell because they can't raise any more money. Or a really great company that I represented which had $168 million put into it. And the management of that company was very self-centered, very arrogant. I'm talking about the CEO. The board would not get rid of that person. When they got rid of the person, the product was superb, but it was over-engineered, couldn't be sold at a good price point, and the company went belly up. That was tragic.
So you're talking about when an opportunity was missed. There was really some great potential there.
I've never seen dark moments from the failure of science, only the failure of people, And that's just part of It's like Dickens. He had villains, he had heroes. The best of times, the worst of times.
Bruce Jenett, partner at DLA Piper and longtime industry insider. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Today's show is sponsored by Ingenuity iReport, the fastest and most accurate way to get biological meaning from your expression data. You can upload your data and get a free iReport analysis summary at www.ingenuity.com/get-iReport.
Heroes. The best of times, the worst of times.
Bruce Jenett.
Jenett. We can try it again. Let's try that one again.
Bruce Jenett, attorney at DLA.
Cyril can't pronounce my name right, but I can pronounce it. I can spell it. Okay.